where are you looking first for evidence that might show that this isn't just a risky attempt or a one-off that might work at one institution and not another? Where could the evidence be gathered in a quick way to know that something might be usable and replicable somewhere else?
Well, we've got two levels of evaluation going on. On the one hand, each of the colleges that's in the DevEd initiative has to do their own evaluative work. That's something that they were required to do in Achieving the Dream. So we've continued that. We say that this is all about continuous improvement, continuous measurement, and adjusting all along the way. So each of the colleges has to be, they're responsible for their own assessment. It's still too early for us to get the information out of that, but they'll be doing that. The other thing that we're doing is that MDRC has been doing an external evaluation. They just completed site visits to each of the campuses and are getting ready to give us a summary of some of what they're seeing. Then they'll be going back again each year to take a better, an updated look at what's going on at each of the colleges. So in those two ways are our primary ways of really documenting and figuring out how much of this is taking hold. The other thing that colleges do is they submit annual compliance reports to us, and then we debrief those reports with them. They just submitted them in April. We're in the process of looking at them. We're going to be meeting with the presidents from the developmental ed colleges on June 9th and 10th and trying to engage them in some problem solving around some of the things that came out of the annual compliance reports, as well as MDRC's recent site visits. And some of those topics are, just what you just named. How do you scale when you're still doing a combination of new things as well as more proven things? And frankly, how do you do it in this time frame? I think one of the things that the MDRC assessment discovered was that even though these colleges thought they were very, very prepared to jump into this work, the reality of last year in particular was that most of them were facing tremendous pressures from bulging enrollments. The economy was sending a lot of people to the community college doors, and they were having to deal with those spikes in enrollments. They were also having to figure out how to provide the professional development that was necessary to put some of these things in place at larger scale. They were challenged by finding adequate space. Just some things that, probably should have been thought through, but at the time didn't seem to be as big a challenge as they ended up being. So I think that's one of the lessons about the DevEd work up to this point in time, is that the planning period, it just really needs to be a very thoughtful, deliberate activity, because when you're trying to do something at large scale, there are just so many moving parts and so many people that have to be involved that I think maybe most of us underestimated how much time it was going to take to really think these things through. So I suppose the next time we have an opportunity to release an RFP, we will probably be a little bit more intensive in trying to lengthen the time period, work with a grantee in terms of, really talking about what are their plans and strategies for putting this in place, and helping the colleges think through some of these things that are inevitably going to pop up for them.
What would you hope that some of the post-secondary grantees, the other grantees, might be able to work on together? Is this particular risk-taking by colleges and having the evaluation show that their attempts to interventions are scalable? Is that something that you can imagine sharing among other grantees? Is that, especially particular to Achieving the Dream? Are there other partnerships among grantees that you could see cultivating or have in place to share around this?
Oh, I think it would be fabulous to extend beyond the Achieving the Dream network. Achieving the Dream Network is growing, as you know. It's getting larger each year. By design, we're growing it. But there's an awful lot of good work going on across the country that's in colleges that are not part of Achieving the Dream. So I would really love the opportunity to use some of the new tools and so forth that you're helping to create to be able to do more networking beyond the Achieving the Dream Network. And I think there are some things. I think we share common challenges. There's some big issues in the community college world that nobody's figured out yet, and we can all be working on them. Just the whole idea of how do you get faculty engagement in these activities? How do you deal with the large numbers of adjuncts who are working in the developmental education field? What are the strategies for getting them more involved? What are the strategies for providing more intensive and sustained professional development? All of those things, I think, other networks and colleges have got a lot to say about, even though maybe none of us have thoroughly conquered those issues. We certainly still have huge IT issues to solve in community colleges. Even the colleges that have many positions in their institutional research office compared to maybe other institutions still struggle with finding enough time and enough resources to really do the kinds of analyses that are going to better inform the work that their institutions are doing. So, taking a look at how can you improve communication and capacity within IR and IT departments, how you can help colleges do a better job of evaluating their work. I think despite the work we've been doing on Achieving the Dream, we've been harping on this for a long time, we still find that there's a huge need for colleges to build up their real expertise in evaluation, understanding when maybe, we had an example recently when we were looking at some data where when our evaluators were looking at it, they were saying, that the trend line is not changing much. When the college looked at the same data, they were saying it's changing a whole lot. And we tried to figure out, why are there two different perceptions? Well, one was because the paid evaluator was looking at comparisons to other colleges and seeing that it was a relatively similar trend line in a non-ATD college as well as an ATD college. So you couldn't really explain the increase in performance to Achieving the Dream exclusively or to a particular intervention exclusively, or else you were left saying, why is another college doing just as well that isn't doing what you're doing? That was one thing that came out. Another thing was we were measuring different points of times, and maybe the trend line was already moving up, and it kept moving up during the Achieving the Dream work, but you can't necessarily attribute an upward trend line to your intervention if it was already going up anyway. So just understanding concepts like that, I think there's a lot more work to be done in terms of building that kind of basic understanding of how you can look at data that we need to still do in colleges. So I'm sure there's others out there in the community college world that are working hard on that issue. That's something we'd love to talk to them about. Certainly the interventions that people are finding helpful on developmental ed, we need a lot more conversation about that. I know the Gates Foundation is funding a lot of great experiments and acceleration and other strategies. We all need to be hearing about those and sharing our experiences so that we can all do better.